Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Good Lawyers Gone Bad podcast. My name is Stuart Teicher. Today's episode is a short rant about some really big lawyers who went sort of bad, and it all happened this week. It's a cautionary tale of a sickness that is spreading throughout the practice of law. And this episode is a little different from the episodes I've done in the past because I'm not going to tell you like a full-blown story. I'm going to rant about an issue, and the reason I'm doing it differently is because I want to get back on track. When I first started this podcast, I released episodes on the 1st and the 15th of the month. And then my work got in the way and I went off track. I teach continuing legal education for a living, and I teach professional responsibility at Georgetown Law. So when exam season and CLE deadline season converged, I got thrown for a loop. But I want to grow the audience for this podcast, and if I want that to happen, the one thing I simply must do is release episodes on consistent dates. So I'm going to go back to the 1st and the 15th for episode releases. You're going to be able to set your watch to it. If the 1st is on a weekend, the episode is coming out. If the 15th is on a holiday, the episode is coming out. And since the 1st of the month is only a week away from the date I'm recording this, I thought I'd release a little mini episode rant to tide you over. The next episode will be the usual story-style format you've come to know from Good Lawyers Gone Bad. By the way, after you listen to this one, let me know if you liked this rant-style episode. I was thinking about maybe inserting some more of these here and there. Go to the Good Lawyers Gone Bad website, that's goodlawyersgonebad.com, click the Contact Us tab, and send me a message. It comes right to my inbox. This story actually starts with me and my travels this week. I went to Kansas City to give a CLE program in a big law firm there, but I had a scheduling problem because I had to give a webinar that same morning. So here's what I planned to do. I was going to fly into Kansas City on Wednesday, stay overnight at the hotel, get dressed first thing in the morning, give my webinar for the Vermont Bar Association from my hotel room, and then as soon as I was done, I throw my computer into my bag, I'm already wearing my suit, I grab an Uber, head downtown, and I speak at the law firm. I didn't have much time between programs, so I'd have to hustle. But like I said, I've done this sort of thing 1,000 times. And when you use virtual backgrounds on Zoom, no one knows where you are when you're giving the program. So you can give a webinar from a hotel room. So as soon as I was done, because I'm already dressed, I'm already packed, I just walk out the door, leave, and I'd be fine. So I get to Kansas City on Wednesday night, went to the hotel, everything's good. The next morning, I wake up at 6, I go down to the hotel gym, I work out, then I grab a cup of coffee and head back up to my room. But when I got back up to my room, my little plastic key card didn't work. So I went back downstairs to the reception desk, they made me a new key, and I went back upstairs to try it. The new key also didn't work. I went back down to the reception desk again, told them, and the staff member came up with me to my room and brought the master key. The master key didn't work. It turned out that the card key reading mechanism on the door was broken. And oh, by the way, they have no idea how to fix it. They need to have the mechanism and the handle removed so that I can get back into my room. I said, okay, can you have the maintenance person come up to the room and get that done? And they said, oh, we don't have an on-site maintenance person anymore. You're a hotel. You don't have any maintenance people on staff? Not anymore. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Now, you should understand, this is not a fly-by-night hotel. It's not even an independent place. It's one of the big brands. But apparently, one of the ways they save costs is no longer having maintenance people on staff. She says, I'm going to have to call somebody. I hope you can be patient. Usually it takes about 2 hours for the contractor to show up. My first thought was, usually? This happens often? And when it does, people just sit around waiting for hours? I said, I have a webinar to give in an hour. My computer's in there. And then I have to immediately go downtown and speak at a law firm. All of my clothes are in the room. She said, I don't know if we're going to be able to get you in there in time. I didn't even know what to say. I figured that now I'm going to have to cancel the webinar for the Vermont Bar Association. And there were hundreds of people enrolled. And then I'm going to have to go downtown and give a live program at a prestigious law firm in my gym clothes. Canceling the Bar Association webinar was going to be horrible, but I was more concerned about giving the live program at the law firm in my gym clothes. I mean, listen, I could tell them the story and they might understand. They might even think it's funny. But there was one wrinkle. I may or may not have a tattoo. And That tattoo may or may not be visible when I'm wearing gym clothes. Now, that doesn't seem like a big deal in today's regular world, but it is a big deal in today's legal world. Yes, even today, I might have a problem, and I learned about that at the law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell. Sullivan and Cromwell is one of the biggest law firms in the world. They made gross revenue of over $2 billion recently. Bankruptcy lawyers in that firm charge their clients $2,000 an hour. The firm was founded in 1879, and they've been a part not only of major lawsuits, but major moments of history. They advised on the creation of the Panama Canal. And did you listen to my episode of the podcast on the Banana Republic and the death of JFK? I talked about the CIA action in Guatemala in the 1950s, and Sullivan and Cromwell was mentioned there. I mean, they've had lawyers who left the firm to become secretaries of state. And a firm that well-respected stays well-respected for so long by not taking risks. So I was at the firm once, and after I was done working, I asked the professional development person there a question. I had known her for a while. I said, listen, what if, hypothetically, I might have a tattoo? And what if, purely hypothetically, what if I took my coat off while I was speaking, and that my hypothetical tattoo might hypothetically be visible when I was talking? What do you think about that? She looked at me right in the eye and said, oh, that would be fine. We'd never have you back, but you can do it if you want. I got to be honest with you, I wasn't surprised. The world of Sullivan and Cromwell style law firms is not the same as the rest of the world. And I'm sure that it's not just them. I'm sure other large law firms would take the same approach. Now, there may be some of you in the audience today who might be members of Sullivan and Cromwell or some other similar firm, and you might be saying to yourselves, oh, I wouldn't mind about something like that. I don't think my lawyers would really care. Okay, maybe you wouldn't, or maybe your fellow lawyers wouldn't. Maybe it was just the staff member who wanted to be careful. I don't know. But I think she was exhibiting the culture of the firm. And I don't mean that in a bad way. What I mean is they don't take risks. Being risk averse is good for a lawyer. In an industry where it's very easy to get in trouble, being risk averse is self-preservation. And that's why lawyers from Sullivan and Cromwell and similar firms don't show up before disciplinary boards. They're sophisticated and risk averse. And yet, this week, Sullivan and Cromwell showed up in the news. And it was not for a good thing. They didn't end up before the disciplinary tribunal yet. But they took a risk that a lot of lawyers are taking, and it bit them in the ass. Sullivan and Cromwell was representing a client in a bankruptcy case. It was probably one of those cases that the firm charges as much as $2,000 an hour. They submitted a legal brief of some sort, and in that brief, they were probably making some sophisticated argument of law on behalf of a big client in a complicated matter. I mean, that's the kinds of cases that they work on. When the other lawyer involved got the brief, we call them the adversary in the law, the other lawyer on the other side. When the adversary got the brief from Sullivan and Cromwell, they reviewed it and they did what every lawyer does. They took a look at the opposing legal arguments and they started to research them so they could refute those arguments in their own responsive brief. As their adversary looked up the cases cited in the Sullivan and Cromwell brief, they realized that some of the law the firm cited didn't exist. According to the New York Times, the opposing law firm provided the court with a 3-page ledger that contained about 36 errors. And a number of the errors were quotes from cases that simply didn't exist. The case existed, but the quotations that Sullivan and Cromwell relied upon as the law from that case, those quotes didn't exist. And it seems to have happened because the firm used artificial intelligence to do the research and the program just made up stuff. Now, let me explain to you why this happens, and then I'm going to explain something that I've been shouting at the top of my lungs for a really long time, and that is that lawyers are never, ever, ever, ever going to stop doing this. And Sullivan and Cromwell prove my theory perfectly. So how does this happen? When you go to ChatGPT or any generative AI program and you ask it to do something, it doesn't think about your question and then go back to some case or bit of research and read that research, then compare it to what you've been asking substantively and provide an answer. The system doesn't work that way. It doesn't think or know or understand anything. The people who create these AI systems scan oodles and oodles of text data into the computer. They literally scan books and articles, websites, and all other kinds of sources. The system digests that data, and that's what we call training the AI system. But here's the critical part. The system isn't reading those words for content. During the training process, the model learns the statistical relationships between words, phrases, and sentences. And then when you ask it a question, it generates a human-like response by using its algorithm to predict the next word in a sentence. It goes back and thinks about the statistical relationship among all the words it was trained on, all of the words it was trained on, the billions and billions of words. It goes back and thinks about the statistical relationship among all those words, and it calculates what the next word in a sentence should be in response to the question that you asked. Because the algorithms are so advanced, it often guesses correctly, but not always. And when it makes a mistake, it's called a hallucination. That word fits because the system doesn't just make a mistake in a word. It makes a mistake in a string of words. Oftentimes, it just ends up making up information that simply doesn't exist. Sometimes that can be court cases that don't exist. Other times, it can give you a real case name, but quotations from that case that don't exist. And that seems to be what happened in the Sullivan and Cromwell case. This is an epidemic in the legal practice. It's all I'm talking about these days on the CLE circuit. It happens so often that you can't even keep pace with the number of times lawyers are handing in documents that have bogus cases or bogus quotes. And it's not just lawyers. People who represent themselves in court cases are doing the same thing. People who aren't represented by counsel are called pro se litigants in the biz. It's Latin, P-R-O-S-E, pro se. These pro se litigants, people who don't have lawyers, they're using ChatGPT to do their research, and they're submitting a whole bunch of fake cases in their own briefs. And what happens? That means the lawyer for the other side now has to read every single brief. I mean, they always have to read the briefs, but now they have to go back and double check that these cases exist and the quotes exist. And it's adding so much extra time because what they're realizing is that a ton of the cases being submitted in the documents from these pro se defendants contain mistaken quotes or bogus, non-existent cases. In a recent case, something like 27 out of 30 cases that a pro se litigant submitted to the court were all bogus. The other side's lawyer had to do so much work to figure out which of the cases were made up that the judge made the unrepresented litigant pay the lawyer's fees for the other side. The ChatGPT using pro se litigant had to cough up thousands of dollars in legal fees to pay the other side's lawyer. The fact that this happened to a firm as respected as Sullivan and Cromwell was a shock. Well, it was a shock to most people. I am not surprised at all, because this is what I've been shouting about for so long. And I've been telling everybody, and I stand by this, it's never going to stop. I'm going to tell you why it's never going to stop. Why so many otherwise good lawyers are going bad. We're not talking about the lawyers who are sleeping with their clients or stealing from their trust account. It's not the murderers or the money launderers. We're talking about everyday lawyers who are screwing up in increasing numbers, and it's all happening for the same reason. I want you to think about what a lawyer's motivation might be when they're preparing a legal document like the one Sullivan and Cromwell submitted to the court in this case. And in fact, it can be any lawyer, any legal document, or really any task. What might the reward be for the lawyer? Now, you might think that the reward is a job well done. It could be, but that's not the answer I'm looking for. Maybe the reward is winning, delivering a win for the client, or maybe more selfishly, getting a win for the lawyer. Also, a possible motivation But it's not where I'm going. Maybe you think I'm being a little more cynical, which I am. And maybe you think that the reward is money. They're able to bill the client. I think that's true, but also not the best answer. The lawyer's reward in creating a legal document for a client is to be finished. That's it. Our reward in everything we do is nothing more and nothing less than just being thrilled that we are done with something. Our goal is to finish a task because then we can get on to doing something else. If you piled up our to-do list, it would be taller than the Empire State Building. The amount of pressure and stress that we have just to finish the work in front of us is incredible. All we care about is being done with something, dispensing with it so we can move on to something else. And that is why the greatest gift you can give a lawyer is a shortcut. A shortcut is like a gift from the gods to a lawyer. Anything that will make our work faster is embraced. It's like a drug for us. When computerized research first became a thing, it was like smoking weed for the first time. Oh, this is good. I gotta have more of this. And they gave it to us for free for a little bit in the beginning. They gave us a little taste, then they made us pay for it, and we did. And then they said, you think that research is fast? Wait till you use ChatGPT to do your research. It was like heroin for lawyers. Oh my God, I got a meeting with my client in 2 hours. Give me that GPT. Shortcuts are a drug for lawyers. We don't have the power to resist. Now, there was an easy way for Sullivan and Cromwell and every lawyer in this situation to fix the problem. There is a very obvious fix. All you have to do is double check your work and you won't get into this mess. But if you do that, you lose the shortcut. That extra step of double checking defeats the purpose. It's not a shortcut anymore. ChatGPT is such a great shortcut that it forces lawyers to do something that we have no business doing. Math. Oh yeah. Lawyers do not do math. We should not be doing math. Here's why. The tech pushers tell us that ChatGPT is 98% hallucination-free. Their generative AI systems, whether it's ChatGPT or some competitor, they're 98% hallucination-free. So we say, you know what? There's only a 2% chance that things will go wrong. I like those odds. And that's when we gamble. To show you how insane that is, think of it a different way. If I were to tell you that when you wake up tomorrow and you get into your car to go to work, there is only a 2% chance that your car will explode, how many times are you going to turn it on? The answer is 0, nil, effis, bupkis, none. But a 2% chance that our career could explode? We roll those dice, baby. Up until now, the belief was that the only lawyers who didn't have the power to resist were the unsophisticated schleppers in the law. But now we see that they are not the only good lawyers going bad. It's all of us. It's all of us because we all have the same pressure problem. We all have the same to-do list. And what we realize now is that the lawyers making the mistakes include sophisticated, risk-averse lawyers from firms like Sullivan and Cromwell. And what's so crazy about this is that Sullivan and Cromwell apparently had a policy in place about proper AI use. And what they said is that it was not followed. Why? Why wasn't it followed? Because the plan probably requires you to double check. But the pressure of finishing those tasks and the availability of that shortcut must have been too great for the lawyers working on the file. I'll tell you what I think happened. Obviously, I don't have any actual evidence. I'm just theorizing about what happened based on what I know about the industry. I think that whoever was creating that document did double check the cases. They checked to make sure that the cases the computer came up with actually existed. But when they found the case existed, either consciously or unconsciously, they gambled. The case existed, so the quote must exist. They didn't go to the next step and confirm that the quote existed too. Why? because they were probably under a crap ton of pressure to finish hours and hours of work. There was probably a deadline looming on 30 different files that they were working on. So when they saw that the case existed, they gambled and figured the quote was probably okay too. But it was clear that this time was the time that they put their key in the ignition of the car that is their career, and it exploded. The firm apologized. They admitted that they used quotes that were hallucinated by AI, and they said that they deeply regret that this occurred. But no matter what anyone says, and no matter how many apologies are made, this is never going to end. As long as lawyers have deadlines, and as long as lawyers have pressure to get things done, this isn't going to change, which means it's never going to end. The reality can best be relayed in my rendition of a great Taylor Swift song. We are never, ever, ever getting any better. We are never, ever, ever getting any better. You'll cite crap and I'll cite crap and we'll cite crap, you'll see. 'Cause we are never, ever, ever getting any better. Like ever. Oh, by the way, on my story about the door in the hotel, 5 minutes before my webinar was about to start, the housekeeping manager walked up to me as I sat despondent in the hotel lobby, and he said, "I reset the entire system, and your door just popped open." So basically, the fix was to turn it off and turn it on again. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. If you liked this podcast, please let me know. I can do some more rants like this in the future. Our next episode will be the normal, longer story style that I do. And if you like the podcast altogether, please rate and comment on whatever podcast platform you use. Thanks so much and speak to you soon.